Have you ever had a year that stripped away everything you thought you were, piece by piece, until you were left standing in the ruins, wondering who you'd become? I'm Georgia Lynn Harper, and 2023 was that year for me. It started on a Tuesday morning in January. I remember the exact date, January 17th, because some dates burn themselves into your memory like brands on cattle. I was sitting in my cubicle at MedTech Pharmaceuticals in downtown Birmingham, finishing my morning coffee, when my supervisor sent an email asking me to come to the conference room. I thought it was about the Henderson account I'd just closed. Big sale, 6 figures. I'd worked on it for 8 months. I was wrong. "Georgia, we're restructuring," my supervisor said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Your position is being eliminated." Just like that. 15 years with the company, employee of the year twice, top sales numbers in the Southeast region. None of it mattered. "Effective when?" I managed to ask. "Immediately. We'll need your badge and company laptop before you leave today." The shame of it, walking out of that building with a cardboard box of my desk belongings while former colleagues watched and whispered. The sympathetic looks, the relief in their eyes that it wasn't them. I sat in my car in the parking deck for 20 minutes before I could even turn on the ignition. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely grip the steering wheel. 15 years, gone in 15 minutes. Before we go any further, I need to know, where are you watching this from right now? Have you ever lost a job that you thought defined who you were? Drop your location and your story in the comments. And if this already has your attention, hit that like button because 2023 was just getting started with me. I drove home to our house in Mountain Brook, the nice Birmingham suburb where all the right people lived. The house Wade and I had bought 8 years ago, the one we'd carefully furnished and decorated to look like we had our lives together. Wade wouldn't be home for hours. He never was. Corporate attorney at Birmingham's most prestigious firm meant 12-hour days minimum, often more. I'd gotten used to eating dinner alone, going to bed alone, waking up alone. But I wasn't thinking about that yet. I was thinking about how I was going to tell him I'd been laid off. Wade didn't handle failure well, his failure or anyone else's. I spent the afternoon updating my resume, sending out applications, telling myself this was just a setback. I was good at my job. I'd find something else, maybe even something better. That's what I told Wade that night when he finally came home at 9:30. "You got fired?" His voice was cold, controlled, that lawyer voice he used when he was angry but trying not to show it. "Laid off. The whole department was restructured. It wasn't performance-based." "How long is your severance?" 3 months. "That's it? After 15 years? That's standard." He paced our kitchen, his jaw tight. "This is going to look terrible. My wife unemployed. People will talk." Not, "I'm sorry, honey." Not, "We'll figure this out together." Just concern about his image. "I'll find something else quickly," I promised. "You better. I can't carry both of us financially. My partnership track review is coming up. I need to show stability." I wanted to point out that I'd been working full-time our entire marriage, contributing equally to our householding, supporting his career moves. But I didn't. I'd learned long ago that Wade didn't like being challenged. So I just nodded and said I understood, and went to bed in our expensive house that suddenly felt like a prison. That was January, the first blow. I didn't know February would be worse. I spent the next month sending out resumes, going to interviews, networking like crazy. The pharmaceutical industry was going through massive layoffs. Everyone was restructuring. Positions I would have gotten easily 5 years ago now had 300 applicants. I was overqualified for some jobs, underqualified for others. Too expensive, too experienced, not the right fit. The rejections piled up like unpaid bills. Wade got quieter, colder. He'd come home late and barely speak to me. When I tried to talk about my job search, he'd change the subject or say he had work to do. Our marriage, which had been struggling for years, was now barely held together by routine and habit. We existed in the same house but lived separate lives. I told myself it was just the stress, that once I found a job, things would get better. I was wrong about that, too. In February, my mama called from Tuscaloosa. "Baby girl, how's the job search going?" "Slow, mama, but I'm staying positive." That's my Georgia Lynn, always staying positive, always keeping it together. She paused. "But honey, how are you really doing?" I wanted to tell her the truth, that I felt like a failure, that I was terrified, that my marriage was falling apart, that I didn't know who I was anymore without my job title and my paycheck. But I'd been raised to put a good face on things, to never complain, to handle my problems privately. "I'm fine, Mama, really." "If you need to come home for a while." "I don't need to come home. I'm a grown woman. I can handle this." After we hung up, I cried for the first time since losing my job. Cried because I'd been so proud of my career, so sure I'd made it. Cried because I'd done everything right, went to college, got a good job, married a successful man, bought the nice house in the nice neighborhood, and none of it had protected me from this. I was 38 years old, and my entire identity had been built on things that could be taken away in a 15-minute meeting. Who was Georgia Harper without her job, without her title, without her income? I didn't know, and that terrified me more than the unemployment. My sister Evie drove up from her shift at UAB Hospital that weekend. She took one look at me and said, "You look like hell." "Thanks, that's helpful." "I'm serious, Georgia. When's the last time you ate a real meal, slept more than 4 hours, left this house?" "I've been busy job hunting." "You've been spiraling." She sat down across from me at the kitchen table. "And where's Wade in all this? Why isn't he supporting you?" "He's busy with work, his partnership review. Is always more important than you. It's always been more important than you." "That's not fair." "Isn't it? Georgia, you've spent your entire marriage supporting his career, making his life easier, being the perfect corporate wife. And now, when you need support, where is he?" "You need to start taking care of yourself," Evie continued. "Not just job hunting, actually taking care of yourself. When's the last time you did something just because you wanted to?" I couldn't remember. "That's what I thought," Evie said. "Georgia, losing your job might be the best thing that ever happened to you." "How can you say that?" "Because maybe now you'll figure out who you actually are instead of who you think you're supposed to be." She left that evening, and I sat in my perfect house in my perfect neighborhood and wondered if my little sister was right. Maybe I had been living someone else's life, playing a role, being who I was supposed to be instead of who I was. But I didn't know how to be anyone else. Not yet. February ended, March came, and that's when the second blow fell. I found out about Wade's affair on April 12th. I'd been unemployed for almost 3 months. The severance was running out. The job prospects were getting bleaker. Wade was getting more distant, more irritable, more absent. He'd started working even later, sometimes not coming home until after midnight. Weekend golf games with clients, business trips that seemed to happen more frequently. I told myself I was being paranoid, that the stress of my unemployment was making me imagine things. I was wrong about that too. It was a Thursday night. Wade had said he was working late on a brief. I was home alone, scrolling through job postings on my laptop, trying not to panic about our finances. His iPad was on the kitchen counter, charging. It pinged with a notification. I wouldn't have looked. I swear I wouldn't have. But the preview showed on the lock screen before I could look away. "Can't wait for this weekend. Tell your wife you have another business trip." The message was from someone named Bryn, with a little heart emoji. My hands went numb. My vision tunneled. I unlocked the iPad. He'd never changed the password from our anniversary date, which now felt like the sickest joke, and read the messages. Months of messages. Since November, before I'd even lost my job. She was a paralegal at his firm, 26 years old, beautiful from the photos. Everything I wasn't. Young, ambitious, uncomplicated. The messages were explicit, detailed. They talked about hotels and weekend trips, and how soon Wade could leave me, how I was holding him back from the partnership he deserved. "She's so needy now," he'd written. "Since she lost her job, she's become this pathetic version of herself. I can barely stand to be in the same room with her." I sat on the kitchen floor and read every single message. Every cruel word, every promise he'd made to her, every lie he told me. They'd been together for 5 months. 5 months while I was spiraling from losing my job, while I was frantically trying to find new work, while I was feeling like a complete failure. And he'd been with her. When Wade came home at midnight, I was still on the kitchen floor with his iPad. "What are you doing?" he asked, seeing me there. I held up the iPad. "Who's Bryn?" His face went pale, then red, then carefully blank. "Georgia, don't." My voice was surprisingly steady. "Don't lie to me. I read everything." He sat down at the kitchen table, not even trying to deny it. "It just happened. Since November, before I'd even lost my job. So don't blame this on my unemployment." I wasn't going to. "Were you?" I stood up, my legs shaky. "Because you told her I was pathetic, that you could barely stand to be around me." "Georgia, our marriage has been over for years. You know that. Then why didn't you leave? Why didn't you talk to me? Why did you let me think we were just going through a rough patch?" "Because it was easier to stay, until it wasn't." The coldness in his voice was worse than the affair. He didn't even care, didn't feel guilty, just inconvenienced that he'd been caught. "So what now?" I asked. "I want a divorce. I was going to wait until you found a job, but since you know now," he shrugged, "we can get it started." "You were going to wait until I found a job? How generous of you." "Don't be dramatic. We'll split everything fairly. You'll be fine." "I'm unemployed, Wade. I've been out of work for 3 months. How am I fine?" "That's not my problem. You should have networked better, should have seen the layoffs coming." I stared at this man I'd been married to for 12 years and realized I'd never really known him at all. Or maybe I had, and I'd just been too busy playing the role of good wife to acknowledge it. "Get out," I said quietly. "This is my house too. Get out. Go stay with your 26-year-old paralegal. I'm sure she'd love that." He grabbed some clothes and his briefcase and left. And I stood in our kitchen, my kitchen for now, and felt the second foundation of my life crumble. First my career, now my marriage. What was left? I called Evie at 2 in the morning, sobbing so hard I could barely speak. She drove up immediately, even though she had a shift at 6 a.m., held me while I cried and raged and fell apart. I kept saying I gave him everything. I supported his career, I kept his house, I was the perfect wife, and he cheated on me, called me pathetic. "He's a bastard," Evie said fiercely, "and you're better off without him." Am I? I'm 38, unemployed, getting divorced. What do I have? Yourself. You have yourself, and honey, that's more than you've had in years. I didn't believe her, not then. But I filed for divorce the next week, hired Sarah Louise Mitchell, the toughest divorce attorney in Birmingham. Sarah took one look at the evidence of Wade's affair and smiled like a shark. Alabama's still a fault state for adultery, and he was stupid enough to document everything in writing. We're going to bury him. I should have felt vindicated, should have felt strong. Instead, I just felt empty. My mama drove up when she heard, held me while I cried, told me she was sorry, told me everything would be okay. "You can come home," she said. "Stay with me until you get back on your feet." I can't run home to my mama at 38. Why not? What's wrong with needing your family? I'm supposed to be independent, successful. I had it all figured out. But baby girl, nobody has it figured out. We're all just doing our best and hoping it works. But that's not how I was raised. I was raised to be strong, to be independent, to handle my problems without complaining. And now I was unemployed, getting divorced, and falling apart. April ended with me alone in a house I couldn't afford, facing a future I couldn't imagine. I thought that was rock bottom. I was wrong. May brought the financial reality crashing down. My severance ran out. I still hadn't found a job. Wade moved in with Bryn and stopped contributing to the mortgage. His lawyer argued he shouldn't have to pay spousal support because I was perfectly capable of working. The fact that I couldn't find work didn't seem to matter. Sarah fought hard, but the legal process was slow. The bills, meanwhile, kept coming. Mortgage, car payment, insurance, utilities, credit cards we'd run up during the good years when we could afford it. I burned through my small savings in 3 weeks. In June, I had to sell my car, the BMW I'd been so proud of, the symbol of my success, gone for half what I still owed on it. I drove my mama's old Honda Civic that she insisted I take. 20 years old, 200,000 miles, but it ran. Every time I got in it, I felt like a failure. July brought the notice, foreclose if I couldn't catch up on mortgage payments by the end of August. I couldn't, not without a job, not without Wade's income, not without any way to make money. I applied everywhere. Retail, fast food, administrative assistant positions that paid a third of what I used to make. Nobody would hire me. "You're overqualified," they'd say. "You'll leave as soon as something better comes along." They were right, but I was also desperate. By August, I had to face reality. I was losing the house. I started packing, sorting through 12 years of married life, trying to figure out what to keep and what to leave behind. Most of it didn't matter. It was just stuff. Things Wade and I had bought because we were supposed to have nice things. None of it meant anything now. My sister helped me move what little I was keeping into a storage unit. The rest went to Goodwill or the trash. "Where are you going to live?" Evie asked as we loaded another box. "I don't know yet. I'll figure something out." "Come stay with me. I have a spare room." "You live in a 1-bedroom apartment, so you'll sleep on the couch." "Georgia, don't be stubborn. You need help." I'd spent my whole life not needing help, being the strong one, the responsible one, the one who had it together. Accepting help felt like admitting I'd failed completely. But I was out of options. I moved into Evie's tiny apartment on August 28th. Everything I owned fit in her living room in boxes I was too depressed to unpack. That night, I sat on her couch, my new bed, and took stock of my life. 38 years old, no job, no marriage, no house, no car worth mentioning, no savings, no idea who I was anymore. I'd lost everything in 8 months. Everything I'd spent 15 years building, everything I thought defined me, and I had no idea what to do next. "You're going to be okay," Evie said, bringing me tea. "I know it doesn't feel like it now, but you will be." "How? How am I going to be okay? I've lost everything." "Not everything. You've lost stuff, things, a job title, a husband who didn't deserve you, a house you couldn't afford. But Georgia, you're still here. You're still you. I don't even know who that is anymore. Then maybe it's time to figure it out." September came. I was still living on Evie's couch, still unemployed, still going through a messy divorce, still feeling like I'd failed at everything that mattered. But something started to shift. Maybe it was hitting actual rock bottom. Maybe it was having nothing left to lose. Maybe it was Evie forcing me to leave the apartment and go to a community meeting at the Magnolia Center in downtown Birmingham. "What's a community meeting?" I asked. "Just come. Trust me. You need to get out of this apartment and be around people who aren't me." I didn't want to go, wanted to stay on the couch in my pajamas and feel sorry for myself. But Evie literally pulled me off the couch and made me change clothes and drove me there herself. The Magnolia Community Center was in an old warehouse that had been converted into a gathering space. There were about 30 people there, mostly women, all ages, all backgrounds. The woman running it was named Loretta James. She was in her 50s, confident and warm, with this presence that commanded attention without demanding it. "Welcome," she said, looking right at me, like she could see straight through me. "We're glad you're here. Tonight we're talking about finding your voice when life tries to silence you. I almost left, almost walked right back out because I wasn't ready to be seen, to be vulnerable, to admit how lost I was. But something made me stay. Loretta started talking about her own story, how she'd been a corporate executive, climbing the ladder, doing everything right, until the company she'd devoted 20 years to had downsized her out, how she'd fallen apart, how she'd lost herself, how she'd had to rebuild from nothing. The hardest part, she said, wasn't losing my job or my status or my income. It was losing my voice. I'd spent so long being who they wanted me to be that I forgot how to be myself, forgot I even had a voice that mattered. I felt tears running down my face before I realized I was crying. So I started asking myself, who am I when I'm not performing, when I'm not being what everyone expects? When I strip away all the titles and the roles and the expectations, who's left? Who's left? That was the question I'd been avoiding for 8 months. Because I was terrified, the answer was nobody. I started going to the Magnolia Center meetings every week. At first, I just sat in the back and listened to other women's stories of loss and survival. Listened to them talk about rebuilding their lives after divorce, after job loss, after every kind of setback you could imagine. Listen to them find their voices again. The third week, Loretta asked if I wanted to share my story. No, I said quickly. I'm not ready. That's okay. You'll know when you are. But after the meeting, she pulled me aside. Georgia, right? How did you know my name? Your sister Evie works with my niece at UAB. She told me about you, about what you've been through this year. Great, I said bitterly. So everyone knows what a mess I am. Everyone here is a mess, Loretta said calmly, or was. That's the point. This is a safe place to be messy. I don't know how to be messy. I've spent my whole life holding it together. How's that working out for you? Despite everything, I laughed, a short, bitter sound. Not great. Listen, I'm starting a workshop next month. It's called Reclaiming Your Voice. It's about helping women who've lost themselves in relationships, careers, expectations, whatever it is, find out who they really are, who they're meant to be. I can't afford. It's free, funded by donations and grants. We want women there who need it, not women who can pay. I don't know. Just think about it. But Georgia, you've got something to say. I can see it in you. You're angry and hurt and lost, and underneath all that is a voice that's been silent for too long. When you're ready to let it out, we're here. I went home, to Evie's couch, and thought about Loretta's words. A voice that's been silent for too long. Was that true? Had I been silent? I thought about my marriage, how I'd never challenged Wade, never pushed back when he dismissed my feelings, never demanded that he see me as an equal partner, how I'd accommodated and adjusted and made myself smaller to fit into his life. I thought about my career, how I'd taken assignments I didn't want, worked with clients who were disrespectful, smiled and stayed professional even when I was being treated poorly, how I'd never complained, never made waves, never advocated for myself. I thought about my whole life, how I'd been raised to be nice, to be agreeable, to make things easy for everyone else, how I'd learned to swallow my anger, suppress my needs, silence my opinions if they might cause conflict, how I'd learned to not have a voice. And somewhere in that quiet apartment, with my sister asleep in the next room, and my entire life in boxes in the corner, something inside me cracked open. I was angry, furiously, ragingly angry, at Wade for cheating and lying and calling me pathetic, at my company for discarding me after 15 years, at the job market for rejecting me, at the financial system that was drowning me in debt, but mostly at myself, for accepting it all, for never fighting back, for spending 38 years being who everyone else wanted me to be. I signed up for Loretta's workshop the next day. It started in October, 10 weeks every Thursday evening, 12 women total, all dealing with some kind of loss or transition. Tammy Lynn Davis, my former coworker who'd also been laid off, was there. We hadn't stayed in touch after the layoffs, both of us too wrapped up in our own survival, but seeing her there felt like finding an unexpected ally. "Georgia Harper," she said, surprised. "I heard you got divorced. I'm sorry." "I heard you did too. A year ago?" 18 months. Best decision I ever made. We grabbed coffee after that first workshop, and Tammy told me about her year after the divorce, how she'd struggled initially, then decided to stop trying to find another corporate job and started a freelance consulting business instead. "The money's not as steady," she admitted, "but Georgia, I'm happier than I've been in 20 years. I'm doing work I actually care about. I'm setting my own schedule. I'm living life on my terms." "I don't even know what my terms are," I said. "Then that's what you need to figure out." The workshops were transformative. Loretta had us do exercises that forced us to confront who we'd become versus who we actually were. "Write down all the roles you play," Loretta instructed in week 2. "Daughter, wife, employee, friend, whatever roles define you. Now, cross them all out. Now, write down who you are without any of those roles. Just you, your core self." I stared at the blank page for 20 minutes. Without my roles, who was I? "This is hard for a reason," Loretta said, seeing several of us struggling. "We've built our entire identities around what we do for others. But you are not your job. You are not your relationships. You are not the roles you play. You are a complete person with your own desires, dreams, opinions, and voice. And it's time to figure out what that voice wants to say." By week 4, I was starting to find words. I was angry at the system that valued profit over people. I was angry at the culture that taught women to be accommodating at the expense of their own needs. I was angry at the expectations that made us small and quiet and grateful for whatever crumbs we were given. And I was angry that it took losing everything to wake me up. In week 5, Loretta asked each of us to speak for 5 minutes about something we'd never said out loud, something we'd been holding in. My hands were shaking when my turn came. "I'm angry," I started. "I'm angry that I spent 15 years at a company that threw me away like I never mattered. I'm angry that I stayed in a marriage where I was undervalued and disrespected. I'm angry that I was taught to be nice instead of honest, to be accommodating instead of authentic, to be silent instead of speaking up. I'm angry that I'm 38 years old and I'm just now figuring out that I've been living someone else's life, that I've been so busy being who everyone expected me to be that I forgot to be myself. And I'm angry that it took losing everything, my job, my marriage, my house, my identity, to wake me up." I was crying now, but I kept going. But I'm also grateful, because for the first time in my life, I don't have to perform. I don't have to be the perfect employee or the perfect wife or the perfect anything. I can just be messy and angry and lost and figuring it out. And that's terrifying, but it's also freeing. The room was silent when I finished. Then everyone started clapping. "That," Loretta said, "is your voice. Hold on to that." I left that night feeling lighter than I had in months, maybe even years. The divorce was finalized in November. After months of Wade's lawyers trying to screw me over, Sarah Louise Mitchell had fought like hell to get me a fair settlement. The affair evidence, documented so thoroughly in Wade's own messages, had given us leverage. I got half of everything, including my share of the house sale. It wasn't much after the lawyer's fees and the debts, but it was enough for a fresh start. Wade had to pay spousal support 2 years while I got back on my feet. His lawyers had argued against it, but Sarah had pointed out that I'd supported his career for 12 years, moved for his jobs, sacrificed my own advancement for his partnership track. The judge agreed. Walking out of that courthouse on November 15th, officially divorced, I felt nothing. Not sad, not relieved, just empty. "You did good," Sarah said. "You stood up for yourself. You got what you deserved." But what had I gotten? Money that would run out, time to figure out my next move, freedom from a marriage that had been killing me slowly. Was that winning? I went to Loretta's workshop that night, still processing. "My divorce was finalized today," I told the group. "How do you feel?" Loretta asked. "I don't know. I thought I'd feel relieved, or sad, or something, but I just feel empty, like I should be celebrating my freedom, but I'm just exhausted." "That's normal," Tammy said. "When my divorce was final, I went home and took a 4-hour nap. I'd been running on adrenaline for so long, and suddenly it was over, and I just crashed." Endings are exhausting, even good endings. You've been fighting for months. Give yourself permission to rest. But I didn't want to rest. I wanted to do something, wanted to feel productive, useful, like I was moving forward instead of just treading water. "I need a job," I said. "I've been unemployed for 10 months. The settlement will help, but I need to work. I need to do something." "What do you want to do?" Loretta asked. "I don't know. I thought I wanted to get back into pharmaceutical sales, but every time I update my resume or go to an interview, I feel physically ill. I don't want that life anymore." "So what do you want?" I struggled to find the words. "I want to do something that matters, something that helps people, something that's not just about profit margins and sales numbers." "Like what?" "I don't know. I've been thinking about the work you do here at the Magnolia Center, about community organizing, about helping women find their voices, about making actual change instead of just making money for some corporation." Loretta smiled. "We could use help. The center's growing. We're getting more funding, more programs. I can't do it all myself anymore." "I don't have any experience in nonprofit work." "You have experience organizing, managing projects, meeting goals, working with people. That's exactly what nonprofit work is, just with a different mission." "I can't afford to work for free." "I'm not asking you to. We just got a grant that includes funding for a program coordinator position. It doesn't pay what you used to make, but it's a living wage. And Georgia, it might be exactly what you need." I thought about it. Thought about going back to corporate life, back to chasing sales numbers and pleasing difficult clients and building someone else's profits. Then I thought about the women in this room, about the work Loretta was doing, about making a difference instead of just making money. "Can I think about it?" "Of course, but don't think too long. The universe doesn't usually offer the perfect opportunity twice." I talked to Evie about it that night. "You should do it," she said immediately. "But it's a pay cut from what I used to make. Do you need what you used to make, or do you need enough to live on and do work that matters?" "I don't know." "Georgia, you've spent the last year losing everything and finding yourself. Don't throw that away by going back to a life you know you don't want just because it pays more." "But what if I fail?" "What if you don't?" I talked to my mama about it. "Baby girl, I've watched you these past months, watched you fall apart and start putting yourself back together. You're different now, stronger, more yourself. Don't lose that by going back to playing it safe." "But Mama, you always taught me to be practical, to choose security." "I taught you wrong," she said quietly. I taught you what I knew, what I thought would protect you. But honey, playing it safe didn't protect you from anything. You still lost your job. You still got divorced. All that security you thought you had, it was an illusion. So what do? You do what makes you come alive. You do work that matters. You choose yourself. I called Loretta the next day and accepted the position. I started at the Magnolia Center the first week of December. Working at the Magnolia Center was different from anything I'd ever done. The pay was half what I used to make. The office was a converted warehouse with questionable heating. My title was program coordinator, which meant I did a little bit of everything: event planning, grant writing, community outreach, program development, whatever needed doing. It was chaotic and underfunded and sometimes frustrating. And I loved it. For the first time in my adult life, I was doing work that actually mattered, work that made a difference in real people's lives. I helped organize workshops for women who'd lost jobs, lost marriages, lost themselves. I connected them with resources: legal aid, job training, counseling, housing assistance. I watched them find their voices and their strength. And somehow, in helping them, I kept finding my own. By January, exactly 1 year after I'd lost my job, I was a completely different person than I'd been. I was living in a tiny studio apartment I'd rented with my settlement money. It wasn't the Mountain Brook house, but it was mine. I'd painted the walls myself, decorated it with thrift store finds, made it into a space that felt like me. I drove my mama's old Honda and didn't feel ashamed anymore. It was just a car. It got me where I needed to go. I wore jeans and sweaters to work instead of business suits, pulled my graying hair back in a simple ponytail instead of spending an hour on corporate hair. I looked tired, older, less polished, but I also looked real, authentic, like myself. The divorce was final. Wade had married Bryn in a quick ceremony in December, I'd heard through mutual friends. Felt nothing. They were welcome to each other. I was focused on building something new, not just a new career, but a new life, one that was actually mine. In January, Loretta asked me to speak at a community event, a panel on resilience after job loss. I don't think I'm qualified, I said. You lost your job a year ago. You lost your marriage, your house, everything you thought defined you, and you're still here, still standing, still building. You're more than qualified. I'm terrified of public speaking. Good, do it anyway. Your voice matters, Georgia. It's time you used it. The event was at the Birmingham Public Library, about 60 people in the audience. Other panelists included a former auto worker, a teacher who'd been riffed, a small business owner who'd lost everything in the pandemic. When it was my turn to speak, my hands were shaking. My voice came out small and trembling, but I spoke anyway. I told my story: the job loss, the affair, the financial collapse, the months of feeling worthless and lost and like a complete failure. And then I told them about finding my voice. For 38 years, I said, my voice getting stronger, I let other people define who I was. I was someone's employee, someone's wife, someone's daughter, but I was never just myself. Never asked what I wanted or needed or dreamed about. I just played the roles I was given and called it success. People were nodding. Some were crying. Losing everything was the worst thing that ever happened to me, but it was also the best thing because it forced me to figure out who I was when all the roles were stripped away. And what I found was a voice that had been silent for too long, a voice that had opinions and anger and dreams and needs, a voice that deserved to be heard. I talked about the Magnolia Center, about Loretta's workshops, about learning that being messy and authentic was better than being perfect and fake. I make less money now than I did a year ago. I drive an old car and live in a tiny apartment, and I'm still figuring out who I am. But for the first time in my life, I'm actually living instead of just performing. I'm using my voice instead of silencing it. And that's worth more than any corporate salary or nice house or impressive title. The applause was thunderous. After the event, at least a dozen people came up to me to thank me for my honesty, to share their own stories, to ask about the Magnolia Center. One woman, probably in her 50s, grabbed my hand and said, "Thank you. I've been silent my whole life, but hearing you, it made me realize I don't have to be. It's not too late. It's never too late." And I believed it. The panel had been recorded and posted online. It went viral in a way we never expected. Within a week, it had 50,000 views, then 100,000, then 500,000. My inbox exploded with messages from women all over the country sharing their stories, their job losses, their divorces, their struggles to find themselves. "Your story gave me hope," one message read. "I've been unemployed for 8 months, and I thought my life was over, but you showed me it's not ending, it's just changing." Another, "I've been in a loveless marriage for 15 years, staying because I'm afraid of being alone. Your courage to leave and rebuild gives me courage to do the same." And another, "I'm 52 and just got laid off after 28 years with my company. I was suicidal last week. Your video saved my life." I cried reading that one. Loretta found me in my tiny office at the Magnolia Center, crying over my laptop. "You okay?" "People are messaging me," I said. "Hundreds of people, thanking me for telling my story, saying it helped them." "Of course it did. You told the truth. That's powerful." "But I'm nobody. I'm just a woman who lost everything and is trying to rebuild." "That's exactly why it's powerful. You're not some expert or guru. You're just someone who survived and is willing to talk about it honestly. That's what people need, not inspiration porn, but real stories from real people." The attention brought unexpected opportunities. A local news station wanted to interview me for a segment on workforce resilience. A women's business group asked me to speak at their monthly luncheon. A podcast about life transitions wanted me as a guest. I said yes to everything, even though it terrified me. Because Loretta was right. My voice mattered. And if sharing my story helped even one person feel less alone, it was worth the fear. In March, Bobby Ray Thompson called me, Wade's childhood friend. I hadn't talked to him since before the divorce. He owned Thompson's Barbecue and Catering, a successful restaurant in Birmingham's revitalized downtown. "Georgia, I saw your panel video. I wanted to reach out." "Oh, thanks, Bobby." "Listen, I need to say something. I knew about Wade and Bryn before you found out, and I didn't tell you. I should have, and I didn't, and I felt terrible about it." I was quiet, processing. He continued, "I convinced myself it wasn't my business, that it wasn't my place to get involved, but I was wrong. You deserved to know. You deserved better than what Wade gave you, and I'm sorry I didn't speak up." "Why are you telling me now?" "Because you talked about finding your voice, about speaking up even when it's hard, and I realized I've been silent about a lot of things I should have said, and I'm trying to do better." "I appreciate that, Bobby." "I'm also calling because I have a proposition for you. I'm expanding my business, adding a corporate catering division. I need someone to run it, someone with sales experience, organizational skills, and the ability to connect with people, someone who understands what it's like to rebuild after loss." "You want to hire me?" "Yeah, the pay's good, better than the nonprofit, but more importantly, it would be work with meaning. We do a lot of catering for community events, nonprofits, churches. You'd be helping businesses that serve people, not just padding some corporation's bottom line." "I don't know, Bobby. I'm happy at the Magnolia Center." "I know, and this isn't about taking you away from that. Loretta's already told me she could use a space for events. What if we partnered? My restaurant provides space and food for Magnolia Center programs at cost. You work for me, but still get to be involved in the nonprofit work." It was tempting. The pay would be significantly better, and I'd still be doing work that mattered. "Can I think about it?" "Take your time. The position isn't going anywhere. I talked to Loretta about it that evening. You should do it, she said immediately. But I just found my place here. And you'll still have a place here, Georgia. The Magnolia Center isn't going anywhere. We'll always need volunteers, board members, advocates. But you need to make a living wage. And Bobby's right. This partnership could be amazing for both of us. You're not upset? Honey, I'm thrilled. You're building a life that works for you. That's the whole point. I accepted Bobby's offer in April, started working for Thompson's Barbecue and Catering, running the new corporate division. The work was challenging but rewarding. I was back in sales, but this time I was selling something I believed in: good food, community support, businesses that gave back. And I still volunteered at the Magnolia Center 2 evenings a week, still ran workshops, still shared my story. I was building something new, something that fit who I'd become. In May, I got a LinkedIn message from the HR director at MedTech Pharmaceuticals, the company that had laid me off 15 months earlier. Georgia, we're rebuilding our Southeast sales team. Your former position is available. We'd love to talk to you about returning. Given your track record, we can offer a significant raise. 15 months ago, that message would have been everything I wanted: vindication, validation, proof that I was still valuable. Now, I stared at it for about 30 seconds before hitting delete. I had no interest in going back to that life, that version of myself. In June, Wade's mama called me. Mary Beth Harper and I had never been close. She'd always thought Wade had married beneath him. I wasn't from the right Birmingham family, didn't have the right connections. Georgia, I wanted to apologize, she said stiffly. I heard about what Wade did, the affair, the way he treated you during the divorce. I raised my son better than that. Did you? I asked, not unkindly. Or did you raise him to think his career and reputation were more important than treating people with respect? Silence. I'm sorry, she said finally. You're right. I did raise him that way. And I'm sorry for the role I played in making you feel less than. You deserved better from all of us. Thank you for saying that. How are you doing? I heard you're working for Bobby Thompson now. I am, and I'm happy. Truly? Truly. For the first time in years, I'm actually happy. I'm glad. You deserve that. After we hung up, I realized I'd forgiven Wade, not for him, but for me. Carrying that anger was exhausting, and he didn't matter anymore. He was just a person I used to be married to, living his life while I lived mine. July brought the 1-year anniversary of losing my house. Instead of being depressed about it, I celebrated, had a party in my tiny studio apartment with Evie, Tammy, Loretta, and a few other women from the Magnolia Center. What are we celebrating? Surviving, growing, becoming. We drank wine and ate takeout and laughed about the things that had seemed devastating a year ago, but felt like freedom now. Remember when you were sleeping on my couch? Evie said. And you were convinced your life was over? I was so dramatic, I admitted. You were in pain, Loretta corrected. There's a difference. But look at you now. You've built a whole new life. I wouldn't have without all of you. That's the point, Loretta said. We're not meant to do this alone. Women supporting women, that's how we survive. That's how we thrive. In August, exactly 18 months after losing my house, I spoke at a TED-style event in Atlanta about resilience and finding your voice. The organizers had seen my viral panel video and invited me to do a longer talk. I was terrified, but I said yes anyway. I talked about 2023, about losing everything, about thinking my life was over, about learning that who you are is not what you do, or who you're married to, or what you own. We build our identities on things that can be taken away: jobs, relationships, houses, status. And when those things are gone, we think we're nothing. But the truth is, we're everything. We're whole people with voices that matter, with stories that need telling, with strength we don't even know we have until we're forced to use it. I talked about the women at the Magnolia Center, about community and connection and supporting each other through hard times. 2023 took everything from me except my voice, and that voice, the one I'd been silencing for 38 years, turned out to be the most important thing I had. It's the thing that rebuilt my life, the thing that connected me to purpose and community and my own authentic self. So if you're going through your own 2023 right now, if you're losing everything or have already lost it, I want you to know something. You still have your voice, and that voice is powerful enough to rebuild anything. Standing ovation. Afterward, at least 50 people came up to share their stories, to thank me, to ask questions. One woman, probably my age, crying, said, "I've been silent for 20 years, in my marriage, in my career, in my life, but listening to you, I'm ready to speak up. I'm ready to use my voice." Then use it. The world needs to hear what you have to say. In September, a literary agent reached out. "I saw your TED Talk. Have you thought about writing a book?" Publishers are looking for authentic stories about resilience, especially from women navigating job loss and identity transformation. A book? I'd never considered writing a book, but I thought about all the messages I'd received, all the women who told me my story helped them, all the people still struggling in silence. What would the book be about? Your story, but also practical advice for others going through similar situations, how to rebuild after losing everything, how to find your voice, how to create a life that's authentically yours. I talked to Loretta about it. "You should do it," she said immediately. "I'm not a writer." "You're a storyteller. That's different. In Georgia, think about the impact. Your panel video reached 500,000 people. A book could reach millions." "That's terrifying." "Good. The important things are usually are." I signed with the agent in October, started working on a book proposal. It was harder than I expected, distilling 18 months of pain and growth into coherent chapters, trying to make my experience universal enough to help others while keeping it personal enough to be honest. But I kept writing. I wrote about the job loss, about the affair, about the financial collapse, about hitting rock bottom on Evie's couch. I wrote about the Magnolia Center and Loretta's workshops, about finding community and connection, about learning that being vulnerable was strength, not weakness. I wrote about finding my voice. The proposal sold in November. A major publisher offered a solid advance and a publication date for the following fall. 2023 took everything except my voice, a memoir of loss, resilience, and radical authenticity, they wanted to call it. I loved it. When I told my mama, she cried. "My baby girl writing a book. I'm so proud of you." "You taught me to be strong, Mama." "No, honey, I taught you to be silent and call it strength. You taught yourself the difference." The day I signed the book contract, I went to the cemetery where I'd scattered my old identity. Not literally, but figuratively. I'd spent 38 years being who everyone else wanted me to be, and in 18 months, I'd learned to be myself. It hadn't been easy. There were still hard days. Days when I missed the financial security of my old life, when I worried about money, when I felt lonely. But I wasn't empty anymore, wasn't performing, wasn't silent. I was Georgia Lynn Harper, not somebody's employee or somebody's wife, just myself. And that was enough. December came around again. 2 years since Wade left. 18 months since the divorce was final. I spent Christmas with my mama and Evie in Tuscaloosa. Simple, quiet, full of laughter and love. Wade and Bryn had a baby in November. I heard through mutual friends. Felt nothing but hope that they'd do better for that child than Wade had done for our marriage. My life looked nothing like it had 2 years ago. I lived in a modest apartment, not a mountain brook house. I drove a paid-off Honda, not a BMW. I worked for a barbecue restaurant and volunteered at a community center, not climbing corporate ladders. I made enough to live on, not enough to impress people. But I was happy. Actually, genuinely happy. I'd found work that mattered, community that supported me, a voice I wasn't afraid to use. The book was nearly finished, due to my editor in February, publication scheduled for October. I was scared about that, scared of being that vulnerable publicly, scared of judgment, scared of people thinking I was exploiting my pain for profit. But I was more scared of staying silent, of not sharing what I'd learned, of letting shame keep me small. In late December, the Magnolia Center hosted its annual holiday gathering. Over 100 women came. Women who'd been through the programs, volunteers, supporters. Loretta asked me to say a few words. I stood in front of that room full of women, women who'd lost jobs, marriages, homes, identities, and I told them the truth. 2 years ago, I thought my life was over. I'd lost everything that defined me. I was sleeping on my sister's couch, unemployed, getting divorced, convinced I'd failed at everything that mattered. Women nodded. They understood. And the worst part wasn't losing the things. It was losing myself, realizing I didn't know who I was without my job title, without my marriage, without all the roles I'd been playing. More nods. But here's what I learned. Losing everything was the best thing that ever happened to me, because it forced me to figure out who I actually was, not who I was supposed to be, not who people expected me to be, but who I authentically was. I looked around the room at all these survivors, and what I found was a voice that had been silenced for 38 years, a voice that had opinions and anger and dreams and needs, a voice that deserved to be heard. I felt tears coming, but didn't stop them. That voice rebuilt my life. That voice connected me to this community. That voice is writing a book that will help other women find their voices. That voice is the thing 2023 couldn't take from me. So if you're here tonight, feeling lost or broken, or like you'll never recover from whatever you've been through, I want you to know something. You still have your voice. It might be buried under years of being told to be quiet, to be nice, to not make waves, but it's there. And when you find it, when you start using it, everything changes. I paused, looking at each face. Your voice is your power. Your authenticity is your strength, and the world needs to hear what you have to say. The applause was deafening. After the event, I helped Loretta clean up. "You've come a long way," she said. "We both have. What's next for you?" "Finish the book, keep working with Bobby, keep volunteering here, keep using my voice." "Think you'll ever remarry?" I laughed. "Maybe someday, if I find someone who sees me, really sees me, and loves what they see. But I'm not looking. I'm too busy building a life I actually want to live." That's the right answer. I drove home that night through Christmas-lit Birmingham streets, thinking about how much had changed. 2 years ago, I'd been terrified of losing everything. Now I knew losing everything had been the beginning, not the end. It had forced me to find my voice, to build authentic community, to create a life on my own terms, to become myself. And that was the greatest gift of all. Thank you for staying with me through this entire journey. I know it was long and heavy and maybe too real, but that's life, isn't it? Long and heavy and messy and real. If you made it all the way here, please hit that like button. It helps other people who might need this story find it. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for caring about a stranger's story of survival. If this resonated, please subscribe. We share stories like mine, real stories from real people navigating real struggles. Share this with someone who might need it. You never know who's silently suffering, thinking they're alone. And drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what part of this story hit home for you. I'm Georgia Lynn Harper. 2023 took everything from me except my voice. And that was the one thing I needed most. You have a voice too. It's time to use it. Stay strong, stay authentic, stay loud. The world needs to hear from you.